EU leaders failed to agree to utilise frozen Russian state assets as part of a reparations loan for Ukraine. At an EU summit in Brussels, 24 member states agreed to common borrowing of up to €90 billion to ensure Ukraine is funded through next year and 2027. The vast majority of the Russian state assets are held in Euroclear Financial Repository in Belgium. The Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever insisted on unlimited guarantees in case of any successful legal action by Russia, something EU leaders could not agree to. As reported exclusively by Euronews, 3 countries, Hungary, Slovakia and the Czech Republic, refused to participate in the support for Ukraine. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said there are forces in the EU as well as outside the EU that are trying to divide Europe.
Ensuring another country €90 billion for the next 2 years, I don't think it has ever been seen before in our history, so it's quite something to achieve. And as you know, I mean, there are a lot of people outside the European Union and unfortunately also inside the European Union who tries to divide us.
The EU insists it succeeded by permanently immobilising €210 billion of Russian state assets. Meanwhile, a much-anticipated vote of the Mercosur-Latin American trade deal was also delayed at the summit. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said she needed 3 more weeks to communicate new safeguard mechanisms designed to protect the agricultural sector. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the deal will be done eventually.
I'm confident that we have the sufficient majority. There is still, as I said, work to do with member states. Therefore, we needed a slight postponement. But, I mean, my friend Antonio Costa has said it already. After 26 years of negotiations, a delay of 3 weeks, I think, is tolerable. It's amazing that we are moving towards the conclusion of this so important trade agreement. And I'm very confident that we'll bring it home.
In a week where Europe declared it would take matters into its own hands when it came to forcing Russia to pay for the war it's waging in Ukraine, the EU balked at the last minute. EU leaders can at least point to the fact that Ukraine will be funded for the next 2 years, but at what cost to Europe's credibility? Shona Murray, Euronews, Brussels.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has said during his annual press conference he believed using Russian assets to help fund Ukraine's needs would amount to robbery.
Чего бы они не украли, как бы они это не сделали, когда-то придется отдавать. Но и, кроме всего прочего, мы будем защищать свои интересы. Ну, где? Прежде всего в судах. И мы постараемся найти такую юрисдикцию, которая будет независима от политических решений.
Putin added that using frozen Russian assets would spook investors and undermine confidence in the Eurozone. At the European Council summit in Brussels, EU leaders failed to agree on using the frozen Russian assets, but struck a deal on a reparations loan for Ukraine in the early hours of Friday. The EU will raise €90 billion on the markets and use them for an interest-free loan to Ukraine to meet its military and economic needs for the next 2 years. French lawmakers failed to reach a compromise on the 2026 state budget on Friday, leaving France without a new budget approved before the end of the year. Differences between the government camp, which favors lower spending and taxes, and the socialists who want higher budgets proved insurmountable. France's deficit is currently running at 5.4% of output this year. Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu announced he would meet political leaders for Monday to discuss how to find a solution. The government is now expected to seek a special law that would temporarily roll over the 2025 budget into the new year while debates continue.
The EU's new entry-exit system is causing major delays at airports despite only covering 10% of eligible travelers, according to a new report. Visa-exempt visitors from countries such as the UK and the US must now submit biometric data at the kiosks, resulting in queues of up to 3 hours. The report, which was published by Airport Council International Europe, has found that processing times are up to 70% at peak periods in France, Germany, Italy and Spain. Outages, faulty kiosks and staff shortages have plagued the rollout since October. More airports will join by April 2026, with the threshold rising to 35% in January. ACI Director General Oliver Yankovic warns of severe congestion and safety hazards without urgent fixes. The US military struck 2 vessels in the Eastern Pacific on Thursday, killing 5 alleged narco-terrorists. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ordered the attacks as part of Operation Southern Spear, bringing the total death toll to 104 since September. The Pentagon claims the boats were on drug trafficking routes, but has released no evidence for individual strikes. The operations have sparked legal concerns over extrajudicial killings in international waters. The strikes coincide with Donald Trump's announcement of a total blockade of Venezuelan oil tankers. According to the reporting by US TV network NBC, the president said he was not ruling out going to war with Venezuela. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro called the moves modern piracy and a diplomacy of barbarism.
The man suspected in a mass shooting at Brown University, as well as the killing of an MIT professor, has been found dead, officials said. The suspect was found in a storage facility in New Hampshire, where he rented a unit. He had a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Investigators believe the suspect acted alone.
The community stepped up. It was all about groundwork, public assistance, interviews of individuals, and good old-fashioned policing. We looked at financial records, we looked at video footages, and in the specific incident, it was actually a video that provided us with a description of a vehicle.
2 people were killed and 9 were wounded in a mass shooting last week during final exams at Brown University in Rhode Island. Police briefly detained a person of interest who was then released due to lack of evidence. The investigation then took a turn when authorities said they were looking for a connection between the shooting and the fatal attack on an MIT professor near Boston.
If you had to choose a timepiece, which you would always put on again and again and again, that timeless watch, what would it be for you?
Oh, that I can't answer. That's very difficult.
Well, I'd absolutely take the RDC Portuguese Eternal Calendar that won last year, because that actually keeps going on forever. So that's the one, if you have one watch forever, that's the one you got to go for.
Do you have a favorite?
Of course.
And how are you going to tell us?
Surely not.
My favorite remains probably the first Finissimo we crafted, the tourbillon manual winding. That's right back in 2014, so 11 years ago. And this is a very simple watch. You hardly understand that it's a very, very complex watch. So it's pretty low-key. At the same time, it's very rewarding because you know you have really a treasure on the wrist.
Maybe the 1518 from Patek Philippe, the one that sold for 17 million.
The best watch for me that I have today is the Gerald Charles Remastered Jumping Hour.
I would put on the perpetual calendar as a complication. I found it a very romantic complication that continues setting the time for years, decades, and potentially centuries ahead.
I believe it would be the Happy Sport that I have designed over like almost 30 years ago.
That would be the Piaget Andy Warhol with the Tiger Eye dial. To me, it's the watch that really stands out, yet tells an amazing story, not only in American art history, if you like, but also in Swiss watchmaking from one of the very finest Piaget.
So our mission at Vertical Aerospace is to deliver electric vertical takeoff and landing to the masses to provide point-to-point transportation. It's about saving time. So right now, if you look at urban areas, the infrastructure just has not been able to keep up with the demand. So you think about how technology has evolved, over my lifetime, 60 years, you'll notice that everything you do in a given day has gotten faster with technology and continues to get faster, except for one thing, and that's mobility. Mobility in and around populated areas just hasn't kept up. And the solution to that is to unlock the third dimension. It's air mobility, and to be able to provide that to the masses.
Really is super simple. You push forward on this lever, it makes you go forward. You pull back on the control stick, it makes you go up. And you just point using the tools you've got and looking out the window, and the aircraft works out how to make it all happen for you.
I don't think these things will last very long. At the end of the day, you've got dozens of people wanting to enter this. They've got a limited amount of upfront funding, uncertain abilities to get more funding, and challenging business plans. That's a recipe for mass bankruptcies, economic carnage.